All right, I'm sick of it. Honestly, I can't take any more of the overreaction as to what is going on at Chelsea. The titles, the articles, all of the people with the think, maybe if Pochettino was more like this, or maybe if I get it. There are lots of things that you can lay out to make a case against Chelsea. It's easy to bury a side that have just lost and crashed out of a cup competition. Why would you do that? Why do that if you're one of their own fans, or even if you're not one of their own fans? It doesn't make any sense. I get that the club isn't being run particularly well at the moment, and I get that there is a breakdown in where Chelsea think they should be. But when you lose possibly one of the biggest owners of your lifetime, and you lose one of the most influential people in the Premier League in Roman Abramovich, possibly a man who is going to be investigated, or at least his ex-club is going to be investigated for the financial practices that were going on at the time, which fueled most of Chelsea's expectations in the modern age. Maybe we should just readdress some of what Chelsea should expect to have happen in this era, when the previous era was possibly built on whatever it was built on. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't celebrate the goals when they go in, or that you shouldn't celebrate those trophies, or whatever it is. You're more than entitled to all of that stuff. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Like, the entitlement and the tone of the articles and the cutting down of young players, young guys who have come into a club that they want to come and be successful at, that they were handed an opportunity at, that a manager who is very smart, very good at what he does, is trying to put together a team that is functional and frankly, is looking in the long term rather than just short-term wins. Why scythe that down by going, oh, well, Potter would be better, or Potter would have better results at this point? Possibly so. Like, if you look into what Graham Potter was doing at Chelsea, and most people have at this point, yeah, he was building something for the long term. And if you hadn't got rid of him, if you hadn't replaced him with another manager who possibly has similar traits, similar ideas, similar things that he could put in place, if not maybe slightly less suited ideas, but still just good ideas, then what are you doing? Of course it was a bad idea to get rid of Potter. Of course, in the short and long term, it's always a bad thing to get rid of a manager, because especially if that manager is on something good, especially if that manager is a smart manager, especially if that manager disagrees with some of the players who probably need to leave your club anyway. Now, I get it. Like, of course there's meant to be frustration. Of course there's meant to be a strong, visceral reaction to your club not winning. And that's fair enough. But don't tell me that there's just meant to be a seamless transition between ownerships, and that a new ownership coming in, who has bought a lot of very good players, by the way, shouldn't have some time to get their feet under the table, at least for a couple of seasons. Like, what they're currently probably unraveling is a series of financial structures which they can't do anymore. So while you're busy unwrapping all that stuff and you're working out what we do in the future, you're also trying to concrete over a really unstable base. Now, maybe when they bought the club, they should have thought about that. Maybe they should have looked into it a little bit more. Maybe they should have known that buying a club from someone who's being forced to sell a club possibly isn't a good idea. But here we are. An organisation with quite a bit of sporting portfolio is owning Chelsea. Now, what's interesting about it is experience in sport can be transferable. So investing in the LA Dodgers, investing in the Lakers, investing in whatever else that group is invested in could benefit Chelsea. But at the same time, American sports and English sports are quite different. The English sport might be moving in a similar direction, but what we're now finding is that constructing a roster, or a squad as we call it in England, isn't as easy as just putting together a bunch of players in the same way as you might do in American sports, in, say, basketball or in something else, baseball. It's not the same idea. You've got to have different interpersonal relationships. You've got to have someone who is able to play in multiple different competitions and play in multiple different ways in order to get these, like, there's not just one tactic. You know, we're not playing Moneyball here. Moneyball's a fantastic film and a fantastic idea, but we're not playing Moneyball here. We're not just doing one end goal, which is, you know, the World Series or the championship in the NBA, or the championship, they call it a championship in NFL, but the whatever trophy you want to win in NHL or whatever, you know? These are two different goals. In football, there has to be a bit more, and maybe it's unfair on basketball and on baseball, but in football, there just has to be a little bit more adaptability for level. And broadly, the concept of playing the same way over and over and over and over and over again and doing what you do well, and the meta of football can change from match to match. So why are we punishing managers for not being able to implement what is a really complex thing to do, what other managers have struggled to do, what last season Jurgen Klopp got a whole season to do because he had time in the bank, because he got kudos, because he got that time from doing previous things. What Pep Guardiola has struggled to do earlier on in this season is put together a team. What Arteta is struggling to do is top the table at the moment. Every manager has their struggles. Why are we castigating someone like Pochettino, who arguably, by previous season's metrics, if you look at what happened when he first went in at Southampton, if you look at what happened when he first went into Tottenham, if you look at what happened when he first went into one of the teams, he gets a baseline that they then build from. Now, the baseline might be low for your club in that first season, right? But it's still a baseline. It's about 1.6 to 1.8 points per game. He might be a little bit below that right now, but he's still got to build a baseline, right? And then he builds from that. He finds who he wants in the squad, and he gets rid of, quite harshly, and in quite a, according to Tottenham reports at least, in quite a cutthroat manner, players he doesn't need. Now, there is an issue with that, and there are two parties here that maybe aren't aligning. Pochettino wants a squad that he can play and some key players that he can play within that. Chelsea have already spent a lot of money, and FFP rules and everything else that is there to govern and make sure that people can't spend too much is now kicking in. Now, boo-hoo, right? Like, if you're one of the other fans, you're just going, well, you should have seen that coming, right? Yeah. But Pochettino is not wholly responsible for that. He hasn't bought all these players. He's not the one who's chosen the transfer fees. He's not the one who's gone out there and scouted at least half of this squad. So should he now be answerable for decisions that were made in previous eras, or even by this owner when they were less experienced in the transfer market? No, I think he should get longer is the answer. This team just need one thing right now. And it was very evident against Middlesbrough what they needed. They dominated possession, they dominated shots, they dominated all sorts of other things. They need a striker. And what's interesting about a striker is it's going to completely rebalance this whole Chelsea team. I get it, like Armando, brilliant Albanian striker, but he's not at the moment a first-team striker. Having Cole Palmer in the middle as a false nine is a lovely idea and is sometimes looked like it was going to work against Middlesbrough. But it's not going to be your long mainstay idea of how to build a team. At least in the short term, there might be a football thing that changes and suddenly everyone wants a false nine of Cole Palmer, right? But in the short term, it's not going to work like that. You need a striker, you need someone who's A, able to knit play together, B, able to bring play upfield, C, able to just make the team confident if they put a ball in there, then it's going to get on goal. And, at least if it gets rebounded or whatever, then there are players who can get in to mop that up and score goals. Go with me on this, right? Around that also then allows other players much more space. And what was interesting last night is players are currently panicking in the space that they do have. Mudryk, I saw one of his shots, he basically put it at the keeper when I was sort of like, why are you putting that at the keeper when you can basically just, like, you are talented, you're meant to be one of these world-class players, talented, put it around him, at least try and get it to make a save. Didn't happen. There's going to be much more space around a striker than there's around someone like Cole Palmer right now, even though someone like Cole Palmer is obviously a very talented young player. When someone sits deep, when someone's got a low block, when someone's trying to not possess the ball and they're asking you to possess the ball and they're asking to counter-attack or they're asking you to make a mistake or, they pick on one of your back line who are currently also a bit of an issue for Chelsea. We'll get onto them in a minute. Then what? Well, guess what? Your striker is going to help you out in that. A, because, if you've got a very confident striker, you've got an instant outball, which at the moment I think Chelsea are really struggling with. There's times where they can't retain possession. There's times where they're struggling to work out how to build up the play. They had loads of shots last night, but, you can have loads of shots. You can have a really great cumulative XG, but overall, what are you actually constructing? Do you pass the eye test? Probably not. Now, is this lower than another era? No. But are there multiple different shaky aspects outside of the striker? Yes. The back line is also in need of some regeneration. Thiago Silva went over last night to apologise to the away fans, and rightly so. If you make that long journey from London to Middlesbrough on a cold night when everyone is basically broke after the Christmas and New Year, then you deserve to see something, like a display which is deserving of that. That's not currently there for Chelsea. Outside of that, they are still rebuilding. They are still scouting. They're still going to be needing time for players to be coached, to be trained, all these kind of things. And on top of that, this will not have been a priority for Mauricio Pochettino. He will not have prioritised one of the cups this season. Do you know why? Because he's going to want to put as high a league finish as possible. He's going to want to get his team into a state where if you coach them for long enough, then you can get your basic ideas instilled within the team. Don't instill those basic ideas like Graham Potter was trying to do, and then however long later, sack him as soon as those basic ideas are just about taking hold. It makes no sense at all. Then in the summer, go and get some of the people who've thrived under his basic ideas. Sure, smart idea, sounds good. So, yeah, like, I'm annoyed by what is going on at Chelsea at the moment. I'm annoyed by the fact that when I look at the analysis, it's so basic. It is so, oh, we're in 10th place. They haven't broken really 10th place this season, and I get that must be frustrating for the team. But there are a lot of very good teams ahead of you who have had much longer, and I get it. Like, you know, Eddie Howe and Newcastle are making it work on a budget. But there is something going on in that club, and, you know, there's something special. There are other sides who have much longer to construct. There are other sides who possibly you should be comparing yourself to, but you're not a million miles off those. Like, you're something like 6 points off 6th place in the Premier League. It's not those teams that you need to worry about. That's 2 wins. That's a couple of weeks of teams losing or having a hard run and you winning. And guess what? Chelsea have been on a pretty good run recently. I know they lost to Manchester United. I know they've had some other frustrating results in the league. And sometimes they've conceded crazy XG when they should have conceded much less than that. But that is clearly, again, them messing around with what is going on in that team. Them messing around with tactics. Them not fully understanding what they need to do. Them possibly not being the right players to fit into a Pochettino system, despite the fact they spend a lot of money on the midfield. And it's also the fact that Chelsea, this season, were always going to need some time. They were always going to need a moment to bottom out. And let's face it, like, if this is the worst, the dip of where you're at, that's good. That's really good. I know, like, they're not looking down the barrel of relegation. I know there are other teams that have it much worse in the league. I know that Chelsea are a talented, young, hungry squad who, with the right manager, will go far. At the moment, the question is whether Pochettino is the right guy. I think we're asking the wrong question at the wrong time. If you get rid of Pochettino, what message are you sending to the Chelsea fans, to this squad, to everyone else? Is that you put in 2 seemingly brilliant managers in Pochettino and Potter, and what you're doing is not giving them enough time to achieve the goals that you set out yourselves in that period. If you don't know enough about football, hand it off to someone else who does. Pochettino clearly does. And the mad overreaction to all of this, I just find frustrating because I don't think it helps the club at all. I'm going to the Chelsea game this weekend. I will report back from that. Let me know what you think in the comments below of what is going on at Chelsea at the moment. I know there can be some better performances, but let's face it, it wasn't actually all that bad. And I'm sick of seeing people just hype things up for clicks. See you guys in a little while. Much love. Bye.